All right, and we are live. Hello, YouTube. Once again, we are back here today. We had a little bit of a scheduling conflict and some other internet problems yet last night, so we're going to try again today, which things seem to be going much, much better. Duff, can I say hello?
Hey, how we doing?
So I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving with your family or whomever, and good Black Friday. Hope no one got hurt out there or anything like that. Hope you got the good deals. And once again, if you missed out on anything, as far as I know where I am, there are going to be plenty of deals come this week for Cyber Monday and that kind of stuff, which will be hard to do because Cyber Monday and everything's online. So I guess try to refresh as fast as possible and get the good deals there. But yeah, things have been going well there. I myself went to Black Friday and got a hard drive, which I really needed. And there were a few other deals out there, but then I looked at the lines and saw crazy people, and I I was gonna go get a jacket at Kohl's, crazy line, so I decided against that. But overall, the deals were pretty good. And Duff, you were saying before we got on that you only went about the certain things. So I take it you probably didn't do a whole lot of shopping Black Friday. That'd be a good guess.
Yeah, no, I haven't checked out any of the Black Friday sales here. So up here in Canada, we do have Black Friday and we do have Cyber Monday deals. But I'm not really on the market for too much. I would imagine a coat would be quite useful with winter just around the corner where you live there, AAA.
Yes, it is getting very cold, and I get cold very very quickly. So that was one of the reasons why I went to Kohl's. Didn't work out for me too well, but I'm more than happy to go back there and get a jacket when it's not so crazy crowded and it's not such a fun time. But either way, we're still going, and the good news right now is the fact that since it's holiday weekend, it's a bit of a slower news week. And with that being said, as you can tell from the title, there's only one major store that really matters right now, and everything else kind of goes by the wayside, which is fun because we're all kind of in the information zone all the time. But the only story that is really a bigger deal is voting. So we had our election and it was supposed to end in November, or I'm sorry, on the 16th or so, and we are still counting votes. We're still trying to make sure that everyone is duly elected as possible. And right now, there's some contention between the candidates, and the ones I know is Florida. There's a lot of voter recounts there, and a lot of skepticism about how the votes are being counted and that kind of thing. But just before we get too far into that, before you and I are talking about the election and how votes are taken between the U.S. and Canada, and just to reiterate to our viewers, like I said, there's a lot of claims that there were fraudulent actions happening in Florida, but I just wanted to get you to reiterate, what have you seen to be the difference between how the U.S. and Canada does their voting process?
Yeah, I think it literally comes down to the relative size of each voting region and just how many millions of people live in the United States. On top of the fact that it appears that each state can have a slightly different take on how the votes are counted and how the process of actually counting them up works. So technically, I'm just looking at the Government of Canada website on how they count votes here, and essentially, all the votes go into the machine. So you feed in the paper, it stores them safely. And then afterwards, the votes are counted up by a committee who essentially say, okay, this person voted this way, this ballot is spoiled, this ballot is not spoiled, but they don't actually leave the physical location that is the voting station. And I think a lot of the problems which seem to come out of what I've been reading about what's happening in the US is ballots can be removed from the voting station to be counted somewhere else, or they can be counted at the station and then moved somewhere else. And whether or not said ballots are known to have been counted and moved or just moved can be kind of up in the air. Therefore, people can, or political parties can, find votes and claim that they weren't counted. So I'm not sure what sort of the double check procedure is in a lot of these electoral ridings in the States, which are having such problems with recounting and having a excessive amount of votes appearing. And I also don't know what the US does or what individual states do in terms of making sure that someone doesn't vote in two different voting stations. Um, so yeah, those are some question marks. But I have a feeling that one of the bigger problems is you guys have a huge population, and therefore trying to keep track of everything becomes excessively difficult.
Yes, that's very true. And to add on to your point there, a lot of the reasons why there's voter fraud is the woman that was in charge in Florida, and unfortunately her name slips by me at the moment, but she has been under investigation several times for basically not doing a very good job. She was, I think, asked by a few judges to bring a bunch of votes and to hold on to votes that she had. Basically, she got rid of them, got rid of the evidence, and so she sucks at her job enough for, I think, I want to say Andrew Cuomo fired her actually. So she's just awful at her job. And when asked about the situation on CNN, I believe it was with Chris Cohn, but I could be mistaken about that. But she just basically went on an interview and said, "Yes, I'm a great person, and people here love me, and blah blah blah." So a lot of fraudulent votes, and like I said, there have been a lot of legitimate claims saying people have been finding votes stashed away, and everywhere. And if Florida wants to extend the date to voting, then a lot of changes that have been made have just pointed to the fact that when we extend voting day, all we can see happening is Democrats get votes, which looks a little bit suspicious. So hopefully that all gets handled better. Unfortunately, the Chuck Schumer and a few of the other ones higher up there that have been asked about the fraudulence have just said that okay, if the Democrat doesn't win, it's fraud, which sounds really stupid and childish, but that's how things are right now. So, we thought that I guess we thought that things might get better once voting ends, but apparently voting can never end. So we're in that kind of twilight zone right now. And ironically, just to throw it out there, that I found it funny. I was watching the Michael Noah show a few weeks ago, and he made the tweet about, I think it was a tweet saying, our Republicans vote on the 16th of November, Democrats vote on the 17th. So it sounds like that actually might have happened, where Democrats maybe didn't understand the deadline for voting. But anyway, it's very crazy, confusing. I guess the good news is Trump, or the Republicans, have kept the Senate. Of course, they lost the House, which we also coming, and now backtracking a bit, we have Nancy Pelosi trying to go and get her fought for the House leadership role. And on that note, we have seen a lot of people trying to, a lot of the newer Democrats coming in. They're celebrating themselves for being so diverse, and a lot of people flip flopping and kind of thing. But that being said, Duff, I don't know if you heard the news about Ocasio-Cortez putting her support behind Pelosi by chance.
Sorry, what was that again, Triple A?
Oh, I was just saying, it's been interesting to see how the Democrats are trying to coalesce behind one another, and then the base is trying to, figure themselves out. And before, we weren't sure which way they were going. So I didn't know if you heard about Ocasio-Cortez throwing her support behind Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House.
Oh, okay. No, I had not heard too much about that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that it's interesting. She had a lot of in the beginning, of course, she made a lot of outrageous statements that we're all kind of like, that doesn't make sense. But okay, and you're young and you don't have a lot of experience, so that kind of that we understand that you're not going to say the smartest things in the world. But she's been saying some interesting things. But now, if she does put her support behind Nancy Pelosi, then it could seem like she might not be the best on policy, but she does understand how to gain or play the political game, if you will. She is good at having being able to contact and connect with her followers really well and say, hey, I'm at the White House, blah blah blah. Here's what you can do here, and give the cool factor kind of thing to get more votes there. We were hoping that as Trump was trolling, I want to have Nancy Pelosi be Speaker of the House. Great. Well, on the one hand, we thought, hey, maybe since the Democrats are a little bit split, they've got the general base that they've had with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and now we've got Ocasio-Cortez and her followers, and they're radical. Maybe the base will split. Well, now we're seeing that maybe they're not splitting because they all hate Trump so much they might band together. But I don't know. Would you say that, from your point of view, Duff? Would you say that it's possible for them to hate him enough to get together, or do you think they'd still be pretty split at this point?
I don't know if it's necessarily hate, because most of what is said publicly versus what's said behind closed doors, I would say there's probably a huge difference. So in front of the public, you have to act a certain way, but at the end of the day, your colleagues are the people that you're working with, and it's better for your party to work together. So with Cortez going behind Pelosi, that makes a lot of sense. Cortez is relatively new, and she doesn't necessarily want to be the next Bernie Sanders, because if you take a look, like sort of Bernie has been Democrat at points, but he always gets pushed back out after they're sort of done with him, and so they might not have the extreme wing or the support for this extreme wing within the party itself that they would seem to when it's the lead up to an election or to a midterm election, which isn't all that surprising. Most parties, even if they're, let's say, a more extreme party to begin with, tend to moderate over time, but also tend to moderate when it comes to getting down to business. Where I think the problems might arise and where we might see some fracturing will be once they actually get their seats in the House. And I think that happens in January.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting to see like I said, the newcomers coming in, that kind of thing. So we'll see what the agenda's going to be. I guess some of the stuff that would be more infighting right now. I guess, we're seeing a little bit of team up overall, but like, we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to see how much friction that will be between Trump and them, and how much, if anything, will get done. Of course, now that the Democrats have the majority in the House, a lot of we were seeing, for example, the economy, stock markets are kind of changing because a lot of the companies are preparing for regulations and that kind of thing, trying to undo what Trump's done and that kind of thing. So we'll have to, be very wary and watch out for. We've had a lot of nice time with tax cuts, but unfortunately, it doesn't, with each new leader, there's always a chance that the nice things we have are taken away. So it's very, just, using a lot of caution to move forward. But it's a bit scary, and we're seeing this result because of Trump and talking about the tariffs. So maybe he can go back and realize that it was bad. But again, Trump is not really one to apologize, so it's very, it would make a lot of sense to have him not say, okay, hey, this is great no matter what it is going to be. But sticking with Cortez. I don't know if anyone who hasn't heard the news, the Jeff Bezos, who, for those of you who don't know, is the CEO of Amazon, who is now one of the richest men in the world, has recently announced that he's going to move one of the headquarters of Amazon to, I believe it was, DC and New York, and he wants basically the taxpayers to pay for the movement, and so that's never for government subsidies for private individuals, because that's the whole point is for you to go and make your own way, not rely on others' money. But it's been interesting to see this happen because as he has wanted to move, Cortez has actually been against the idea, which is kind of odd because she's kind of going all over the place, and that's actually given a run at for Republicans to say, hey, maybe she's not so bad. But of course, looking further into it, we've seen that Ocasio-Cortez is only angry at Amazon and not necessarily at the general principle behind the thing. But I don't know if you've heard about that, Duff, or what your thoughts are on the subsidies and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I've actually heard a fair bit about this particular story, and it's it's a politician jumping onto something which was already a done deal after the fact. And New York itself is just a very complicated place to do business. Just varying levels of government, varying levels of interest groups, and things like that. However, it's still one of the biggest financial capitals in the world. So if you're going to be a international business, it's a good idea to actually have a headquarters based in New York, because it is a very international city. And so for New York to work around that, of course, they have to offer incentives to the company in order to bring people there and in order to actually take up residence in the city. And there's no real getting around it, from the sense that if you're trying to brand your city as a global city kind of thing, um, you have to get people to think of it that way, and therefore you actually have to be selective in who you bring in. The bigger problem essentially being that New York itself is just such a hodgepodge that once somebody gets in there, who knows what's going to happen. But you have to make sure that they have incentive to come. Otherwise, New York is going to sort of collapse under its own, let's say, the weight of its policies and stuff with regards to that. Where Cortez's complaint feels a bit shallow is essentially she's saying, why aren't we giving tax breaks to the workers? Why aren't we helping people in the city? Don't you know that Amazon at times has paid below average wages? And just sort of ignored the data around that, where it's like you need a corporation to be somewhere, you need a company to be somewhere to create jobs so people can get work. And if a company is underpaying employees, or not paying them at all, in the case of, what was it, one food stamps incident, which was levied against Amazon, which was found not to be true apparently upon investigation, then you're not acknowledging that the system is actually working well, that you can actually call a company to account over their business practices and actually force them to shift their business practices is a good thing. But the fact that Cortez is sort of reaching for past incidences rather than looking at what's going to happen in New York because Amazon is coming there, that's a little bit of pie in the sky thinking, because she's kind of like, oh, well, what about the poor? And it's like, well, what about the poor? Are you saying that Amazon should hire them simply because they live in New York? Or are you saying that, this is going to adversely affect the poor, despite the fact that technically Amazon going there should bring more jobs, should bring more taxes, which should actually help the programs that are supposed to help the poor. So it becomes a quagmire so quickly. So I don't know. Definitely political posturing. Whether or not there's any reality behind it, who can say?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Well, and just as a more general question, how are you? Political posturing is one thing. I'm just curious about your opinion on the general idea of the government subsidizing the movement there. Was that like I said? Is that the without politics? That's just not the best idea. Would that be fair to say?
No, it's actually a really good idea. Um, and the thing is, you have to take it out of the economic argument in order to understand what makes it a good idea. If you want your city to be a certain way, just saying that you want it to be a certain way does not actually make, let's say, companies that you want show up at your door. You actually have to advertise what it is you want to become, because if you don't, there's no way you're going to attract those things which you want. So, for instance, you have a city which is abandoned by the auto industry. It's now in your Rust Belt, and it hasn't been able to get anybody to show up. Well, as a community, you could sit down and go, hey, we're having problems because we can't actually build companies from within the city. There's just not the demographic for that to happen. But we do want jobs, and we actually want them in this kind of sector because we think that would be good. Maybe we give some tax breaks and incentives to get these companies or companies like these companies to come here. And in doing so, we can actually start to build the character of our region up again. So I'm not against incentivizing companies to show up in a city, because I don't actually see how you could create a character for your city in terms of the companies that work out of it without doing so.
I guess it's a fair point. I mean, I always, it's just the I guess my bigger fear there is trying to go and have it. That's the same argument with trying to, taxes and what we use them for and that kind of thing about. I mean, I recently heard a story about, okay, we're going to go subsidize the XYZ sports team to come here. Like, well, that's great. Amazon makes a bit more sense because there's a better shot that I'll use Amazon as a service if they come here. Great. But I guess my worry is, what if a taxpayer is going to be in the end funding a someone to come here who they may or may not use? And I mean, I guess that's an argument for maybe we should start to you lose control of your money. Obviously, you're paying for someone to come here who you don't necessarily want, and it's that's your money. So if it's a business like Amazon, one thing. If it's a sports team, like, well, if I don't need them to be here, then why should they get my money? If that makes sense. I guess that's my
Oh
fear with
yeah,
it.
no, the idea can be overgeneralized for sure, and especially in an increasingly global world, where things can be things can be put through at a level which actually completely removes it from the voters' ability to have a say in it, and become part of a bureaucratic mechanism which becomes unalterable simply because it has its own inertia. So, for instance, the big example of that is the NFL in the United States, because it's technically considered a charitable organization, and it's technically subsidized by the federal government. And it's like, well, why is that? And however that came to be, I don't actually know too much about. However, I think you always have to break it down to the calculation of what am I losing versus what am I gaining. So if you subsidize a particular company, or let's say types of industry, to come into your area, and prior to that you were making let's say $5, once they come in you start making $15, but suddenly you have to pay $5 to help pay off whatever those incentives are. On the net, you're still $10 ahead. So is paying out $5 enough to make $10, in your opinion?
It's tricky. I mean, I guess this is the best I can say. There's not a I can see the reason for doing it. It's just, it's complicated thing. Like I said, I think that, Amazon coming and saying, hey, we're gonna give you jobs, that's better than like, hey, there's this I don't know, if there is a, like I said, sports team or other thing where I may or may not necessarily use the business and all, that's, yeah, okay, if it creates jobs, great. But there's always I guess another way to have more corruption. That, oh, we're going to use this for this stuff, and like, well, we're not really sure where it's going. So it's still it's a hairy subject. I guess on the face of it, it's just very gray area, and so I'm always skeptical with people. People that they, hey, we need the money for this stuff. Okay, great. Well, I'd rather just use the money for things, and when it's needed for utilities, that's one thing. But when it's used for, oh, hey, we have to pay them and do whatever else, like the whole argument of too big to fail or that kind of stuff. So it's I'm just very very skeptical, and not necessarily there's a lot of good and bad there, but just just very very cautious with the whole idea. But no, so something to look for, and like I said, we've had several people trying to take advantage of the situation and stuff. So, but you know what? I hope that it does work out in the end. I hope, if Amazon does move over and if they do get a deal, then they can create a lot of jobs for the people there, and they're expanding company. I mean, I use Amazon quite a bit. I have Amazon Prime. I don't use the video service, but I do like what they do overall. In general, I like what they sell. And, I guess my opinion would probably change if they were selling, I don't know, sewing machines. Like, I wouldn't really care that they're here. So I guess this time it's good, but again, this time it's good. So
Yeah, I
anyway,
was going to say, ironically, if New York wanted to get ahead of the curve, they should have incentivized Alibaba to come into their region. Considering by volume of sales, Alibaba is like orders of magnitude bigger than Amazon. And by doing so, maybe they could incentivize the Chinese government to actually allow international companies to start retailing on that platform too. So, in a sort of an ironic twist, I think that New York getting Amazon to come and put in one of their head offices in New York is good, but at the same time, it's like, you probably could have gone for a bigger fish, which would have been more beneficial down the line.
that's very true. And then just for people who are not necessarily sure, would you mind giving I guess, a brief description of Alibaba?
So Alibaba is an online sales platform which was based out of China. I forget the guy's name, but I think his English name is Jack. But he essentially created the Amazon platform for China, and considering China has in excess of 1 billion people, it immediately started turning over profits and is widely used all through Southeast Asia, and increasingly here on the west coast of North America as well. Generally, things are cheaper, less name brand kind of stuff, but probably made in the same factory. So say you were to get an HDMI cable, instead of getting a blue wire, you would get the blue wire, but without the blue wire decal on it, for about 1/5 the price on some items versus others. But it's a monster. And internationally, it actually pulls in more money per year than Amazon does by a long shot.
Have you, by chance, ever used this service, or?
I have not, but many of the people who I know do have it. Many of my friends who are part of the Chinese community out here, they use it exclusively. And it actually tends to have slightly worse transit times in terms of delivery, but the trade-off for just how much you save on each individual item is ridiculous.
Interesting. Okay. So you say it's basically the Amazon for that region?
Well, it's Amazon for most of Asia. The only sticky thing about it is the Chinese government actually has a controlling asset in the company, and don't let certain companies actually retail on the platform. So it might have a bit of an artificial monopoly going behind it. However, as I say, if New York was a little bit more forward-thinking, they might have gone for Alibaba instead of Amazon.
That's fair. Yeah. I think I've heard of the. I never knew it was that. I thought it was. I always thought Alibaba was something on the lines of Airbnb. So that's interesting you say that. But that's just pretty cool. And I'm just curious along those lines. Are you I imagine you're somewhat of a user of Amazon as well.
Oh, absolutely. Amazon is probably where I buy most of my stuff, and I try and deal poach as best as I can, simply because it's convenient, and it cuts out a certain amount of the advertising that goes along with the actual store experience. So I'm not necessarily an impulse shopper, but I do tend to impulse shop more when I'm in a physical location than when I am online and looking at it. Sad bit is I actually do enjoy interacting with salespeople way more than just clicking buttons online. But for me, Amazon is a pretty good platform for purchases.
You enjoy interacting with the salespeople. Do you just like to talk to people, or what?
Well, yeah, you can talk with them, or if you get the feel that they're not actually trying to screw you over, and they're actually working within your parameters. Like, I love it when you can actually show up and you say, hey, here's my budget. Here's what I've done my backstory. I've done my research on. What can you do to get me a better deal? And if they can actually turn around and give you a tangible, better deal, knowing when you're walking in what you want, what the parameters are, that's a really cool thing. And that's something which you might not have on a digital platform kind of thing. But that involves a little bit of work on the consumer's part. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily go in having done their homework and wind up with 5 things when they just walked in with the intention of 1, and they blew out their budget by 200%. And it's like, how did this happen?
I see. Well, and just I guess on that note, has there been any or how often have you gone in to say, hey, I want this item, can you get me a better deal, and it works out? Like, does that happen? Is that kind of your plan going in, or just kind of like it might happen depending on what you do?
Yeah, no, and usually it's just you have to figure out an item that you actually need, and that's going to be useful, and track its stats, its prices, why it is you want it, what it's going to do for you, and then see what they can do, because it doesn't really hurt to shop around. And then if it doesn't work in the store, you just have to be able to say no after interacting with the salesperson. And some salespeople are terrible and will try and upsell you like no other. And some salespeople are out to be like, okay, I'm here for the customer. Good customer service dictates that I'm going to give you the best deal that we can. I still might be trying to upsell you, but I want you to feel like you're getting value out of this interaction. But hit or miss for sure.
Interesting. And well, and since we're on this subject, I guess, would you say that since a lot of it's done online, what would you say that you go to the stores to actually buy? Since a lot of, like you said, a lot of the your shopping is done online.
Um, so for me personally, most of my store shopping is for things like consumables that I would wear, consumables which um, I need an actual, physical frame of reference to understand what that looks like. So it's like I might not buy a painting on sorry, from the store, but I would definitely have to go in and be like, okay, how big is this painting or something like that, so that I can get it in my head that this is what it would look like on my wall. I can't do that just from a picture online, or I can't quite do it either if I were to get a tape measure and a ruler and actually measure out on my wall what that would be. So going there to actually get a sense of it and actually finding a painting that I like that's a reasonable price, I see that as a pretty good use of my time. Things like shoes, things like pants, other stuff, those you want to be able to go in and check out. And it's always nice when the store itself has somebody to take in the sides of your nice new shirt, or to rehem your pants if they're slightly too long, kind of thing. Whereas if I didn't do that, I'd have to go out and find somebody to hem my pants and to do other stuff. And it's like, well, that's an extra step. So I see that as being value added, that store offers other services that are useful for their apparel.
No, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think I agree. Most things, I don't know, movies, games, all that kind of stuff can definitely be bought online and it can be returned. But yeah, I think that, of course, food and clothing is one of those you have to wear it in store, get a feel for it, see, oh, hey, I think that I'm a size this. Oh, I'm really not. Or, might look blue in the picture, but in reality it looks black, and have all those small details that really do matter. Know that at the store and kind of thing. And of course, some deals are only found at the store and that kind of stuff. So that's fair. But no, I just curious there. So anyway, just for one, before we wrap things up here, I wanted to, if for those of you who don't know, I think it was on Thanksgiving Day, Trump had a speech. I don't think it's really a tweet, and he, this is more of a funny story. He described I'm sorry, this was the speech where he was about to have Thanksgiving dinner and pardoned the turkey, and it was a bit of a troll. So it's kind of funny, but anyway, this is part of Trump's speech, and so Trump says, and I quote, "Thanksgiving is a time of great American traditions, and today we continue a very special one. When a lucky turkey gets a presidential pardon. That turkey is so lucky. I've never seen such a beautiful turkey. It has been stated that President Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, was the first president to grant such a pardon after his son Tad befriended the Christmas turkey and implored his father, 'Please, Dad, save it.' In this grand tradition, I am pleased to announce that today's lucky bird and guest of honor is named Peas, along with this alternate name, Carrots. The children will understand that." Then Trump went on to say, "The winner of this vote was decided by a fair and open election conducted on the White House website. There was a fair election. Unfortunately, Carrots refused to concede and demanded a recount, and we're still fighting with Carrots. Now I'll tell you, we've come to a conclusion. Carrots, I'm very sorry. The results did not change. Too bad for Carrots. After their good fortune, Peas and Carrots both live out the rest of their days at Gobbler's Rest on the campus of Virginia Tech, a good place. They will enjoy a beautiful private enclosure under the care of poultry science students and veterinarians. In other words, they're going to be well taken care of at Virginia Tech. However, it won't be entirely a rest. Even though Peas and Carrots have received a presidential pardon, I have warned them that House Democrats are likely to issue them both subpoenas." So, again, Trump joking about Thanksgiving and that kind of thing, which before the break we just discussed with each other there, Duff. You said that you actually in Canada have already had a Thanksgiving tradition, or you celebrating Thanksgiving already, correct?
Yeah, no, Canada's Thanksgiving we actually celebrate in October.
I see. And is it kind of the same tradition, more or less, I guess, we would do over here? Anything different you guys do, or?
No, they're pretty much analogous with one another. So in terms of the food and other stuff, where we trace our Thanksgiving from is a little bit more roundabout. You guys have a more specific tie. I think it is to the Puritans, and they're surviving in the first couple of months of sorry, their first winter or something, or rather like that. Uh, Ours doesn't have quite that direct legacy, but friends, family, food, Canadian football, but mostly Canadian hockey. And we do get a holiday, usually on the Friday before that, or is it the Monday? I forget. But yeah, no, essentially the same thing, just a different month.
I imagine food and fixing is fairly similar as well.
To a degree. The only thing which I would say is radically different might be relative portion sizes. It might be a bit of a stereotype, but here in Canada, we're always thinking like, wow, the Americans like their monster birds, and just the sheer amount of food. But that might be more of an urban legend than reality.
I see. I mean, we've got for my Thanksgiving, we had the turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce. I think we had green bean casserole and sweet potato casserole and a few things like that. But I'm imagining you had a similar menu when you for your meal.
What did we do this year? This year, I actually went to somebody else's place to celebrate, so it was a bit different. But generally, you have either a turkey or a ham. You have your side dishes, your mashed potatoes, your corn, your carrots, and then things like candied yams, and then whatever's for dessert, apple pie with a spoon of ice cream. But I think the neatest Thanksgiving turkey I've ever had was actually a curry turkey that was done by some friends of mine. And my friend's then girlfriend did a really nice brine mixture with the turkey, with the curry infused in it, and then they baked it. But I've also heard from people from Louisiana that what they like to do is a deep fried turkey, which they would brine in Mountain Dew for basically 3 days prior to cooking it and then deep frying it. And apparently that's quite amazing, but I've never had the opportunity to try it.
They deep fried it in Mountain Dew for 3 days.
No, so they brine it, meaning they put it into the Mountain Dew and they let it sit in the fridge in the brine for 3 days prior to. Then they take it out and then they drop it in the deep fryer oil.
Do they just love Mountain Dew or what? Holy crap!
Maybe. Or I think it's actually more to do with the fact of its relative acidity and breaking down a bunch of the connective tissues within the turkey so that a lot of the moisture content will get wicked into the meat. So when you deep fry it afterwards, you actually get a slightly sweeter, slightly moister turkey.
Or did these guys cook a lot? Or is this something they found online? Wow.
I wouldn't know. I'd have to ask them.
That's well, and so it was a good Thanksgiving with at your friends. Then I take it.
Oh yeah, yeah. At least as far as I remember. But remember, it's been a month.
That's fair. That's fair. Which one, just one final point before we go. I just wanted to bring that up. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving there, and hope that since we're going into the holiday season now, with the next month here being December, and Christmas holidays coming up, of course, a lot of us will be taking trips to our relatives' house and having to deal with all the people we haven't seen in for however long. For Thanksgiving definitely is the trying to go and make sure that we're all we should all remember why we're there and that kind of thing. I think I read an article for I think it was the New York Times talking about how to have the best conversations with your politically incorrect uncle or whomever else, making fun of the whole Thanksgiving should be celebrated because of this reason we came here, we killed people, and that's why we're celebrating a day. I'm not going to say that I'm the expert on the history behind the reasons we all celebrate it here in the U.S., but if you want to know more about that, the YouTube channel PragerU has a decent video on people coming over here and the day and age, celebrating with the Indians and that kind of thing. Describing a lot of myths and legends about the day and those kind of facts. So, and again, you Duff talked about we have slightly different histories there, but I just want to make sure our viewers know that I don't think if you can keep the conversation non-political, I'd say go for it. That'd be the best idea there to do too. But I wouldn't. Don't be rammed into a corner if someone says, "Oh well, this awful day, and we should change the name and Native Peoples Day and that kind of stuff." It's we're things aren't just the cut and dry. We killed people and blah blah. There's much more history behind that, and we just keep in perspective it's a day to celebrate. Hopefully there aren't too many fights to be had with family members, kind of thing. But I would imagine that I don't know. Just be careful. I'm hoping that there weren't too many debates with when you had your Thanksgiving? Would that be a fair guess, Stuff?
No, no, not particularly. I don't know if politics is necessarily as big as it seems to be in the States, but here in Canada, we didn't actually have any looming elections coming up. We didn't have any major issues. So, as far as I remember, nope, there wasn't too much about politicking around the dinner table.
Well, that's really good news. And then yeah, for our side, nothing too crazy happened there. A lot of just a lot of people hungry, a lot of people wanting to eat. Actually, so I guess I should mention the right. So since Thanksgiving is the third Thursday of this month, my sister's birthday is actually the usually it's on a weekend afterwards, which I should know. Of course, I'm kind of a bad brother, but we that was the main the main attraction after dinner. So we didn't have a lot of politics to talk about. Luckily, I will say the last time we had a discussion about or a family meal together, we did have some political banter, and that's just the you have to pick and choose your battles. So if you really think that someone's kind of grinding your gears, maybe walk away is better advice. I definitely kind of dropped the topic after a little while, but anyway, hopefully everyone can get along and remember why we're all together and appreciate each other's presence and that kind of thing. But anyway, luckily that's nothing too much craziness going on now. I think everything should blow over pretty soon, and hopefully we can all enjoy ourselves and that kind of thing, and wait for next year because it's going to be. I guess we use the word crazy a lot here, and that's overused, I'll say, but we'll have to find a new one. But it's gonna go zonkers. No, it's not a good word either. We'll have to come up with a different word to describe this year and the potential next. But anyway, guys, until next time, please be safe out there. Bundle up if it's warm, and we'll see you next time. So say goodbye, Duff.
Have a good one, everyone.
We will see you all next time. All right, thank you.